Hi guys, it's Cash, and today I'm going to show you how to craft the Evoker legendary weapon, Nasz'uro the Unbound Legacy. I recently crafted this for myself, and now you can learn from my mistakes. I'm going to tell you the fastest way to farm some of the items you need, how much all the materials cost, and the best order to do it all in. So to get the questline for the Evoker legendary, it is an unknown drop chance from killing the end boss of the Arborist raid, Scalemander Sarkareth. You will get a cracked Titan gem, which immediately begins a quest, meaning that it can't be traded. The early quest lines are pretty straightforward, so I won't go into them. However, when you get the quest, it takes a village to make an artifact. This is when the heavy lifting begins. The quest is entirely true to its name, and I enlisted many people to help me fund it, farm it, and craft it. You can, of course, do it solo if you choose, though you will need a jewel crafter, a blacksmith, and an engineer to fulfill your crafting order for each piece. And one of the items only seems to drop from raid bosses, so at the very least, you'll have to join a raid group. But there are many other opportunities to involve your friends, reluctant raid leaders, and excited guildies who can't wait to get the buff from your legendary item. So first things first, the quest It Takes a Village to Make an Artifact asks you to craft 3 separate items. The quest will also give you an item called Ancient Memories, and this serves 2 functions, the second of which is very unclear, so I'm going to cover that here. Firstly, this is the item you have to use on the person who is crafting one of the 3 pieces you need to teach them the recipe. This buff lasts for 30 minutes, and after that they forget the recipe. And its second use, after you use this item on someone, it also gives them a quest called Temporal Gossamer. Now, I believe you have to do group content together, meaning you stay in a party, and group content is doing raid, dungeons, world bosses, killing rares, farming Fire Assault. As you do content together, they can loot special items, and the percentage bar for the quest will fill up when it reaches 100%. Then they can hand that quest in at the Seat of the Aspects in Valdrakken by talking to Nasz'uro. They will receive an item called Empowered Temporal Gossamer, which they use on you to increase the rate that you earn Temporal Vestigial by 50%. Now, getting the buff is completely optional, but I took advantage of it because you need to farm 400 Temporal Vestigial. And where do you get Temporal Vestigial? Oh, from group content like raid, dungeons, world bosses, killing rares, and Fire Assault. Something very important to note is that once you have been buffed with the Empowered Temporal Gossamer, you have to stay in a group with the person who buffed you. The buff doesn't have a duration, but if you leave the party or log out, it disappears and you have to farm for the item again. However, each person can only complete that quest once, so use the buff wisely. The other thing to note is that when your friend buffs you with the Empowered Temporal Gossamer, this also consumes the buff that you gave them to teach them the recipe. The Ancient Memories item that teaches the recipe has a 30-minute cooldown, so just be mindful of that. Okay, now that the fun stuff has been covered, let's look at what we need to create the actual items. There's a list here on Wowhead, which basically outlines it all for you. So each crafted piece does require you to farm something that will only drop for you while you're on the quest. So if you're an evoker and you want to prepare to create the legendary, you can, but you can't get everything. There are 4 items you have to farm yourself once you have the quest. The first is Temporal Vestigial, and you will need 400 in total. We just covered this. It drops from all kinds of Dragon Isles content, and you can get a buff that increases the amount you receive by 50%. I found the fastest way to farm this was doing Fire Assault, though they only drop from the mini-bosses. So you kill mobs in the area to farm for Ward of Igara crystals, and when you get 5, you summon a mini-boss at a small altar, and then you kill the mini-boss to collect your 2, maybe 3 Temporal Vestigial. Yep, 2 or 3 at a time. They also drop Ward of Fireac crystals, and when you collect 5 of those, you can summon a bigger mini-boss at a bigger altar. They will also give you 3, maybe 4 Temporal Vestigial. And if you have a friend with you and they are doing the Gossamer questline to get you the buff, the item that they need for the quest also drops from the mini-bosses at the Assault. And while you're there, the next item you have to farm on your own is Ever-Burning Shadow Flame, which just happens to drop from Fire Assault. So we're sort of killing 3 birds with 1 stone. You will need 30 Ever-Burning Shadow Flame. They drop from the mini-bosses, and I think I had all of them in about 45 minutes. Now, I primarily farmed my Temporal Vestigial here at the Assault, but I also got some from the raid, and that is because the third item to farm is Ancient Elementium Fragment, and you need 20 20 of these. Now the tooltip says that these come from Zaralek Cavern's toughest inhabitants, which I took to mean raid bosses. They could potentially drop from rares, though I didn't test this. What I did test was killing raid bosses in LFR, and the drop rate was abysmal. I killed 3 bosses and no fragments dropped for me, so we reformed and hit up Heroic, where each boss gave me 3, 4, or 5. I did some of this with my friends, and I did some of this in pug groups, but I ended up killing 7 heroic bosses to get all 20. Something to note is that if you are already loot locked on a boss, the Ancient Elementium fragments won't drop from that boss until after reset. And the last item you need to farm on your own are Fleeting Glow Spores. Not to be confused with the common Zaralek Glow Spores, the Fleeting Glow Spores will only drop for people on the quest line. You need 50 of these, and the fastest way to get them is to do the Zaralek dig quests. Now, if you're like me and you've never done a dig before, it goes a little something like this.
Yeah, it's fine. Pick him up.
Yep. I carry him in my arms.
Alright, now click him.
I can't pick him up. I carry you. Alright, get down. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you down.
Alright, now pick him up. Now you need to put him down. You really put him down on the right spot. Fucking hell.
Oh.
I tried.
A little bit further. So now you have to put him down to open the chest.
This fucking guy. So my advice is that if you are doing your digs frequently, maybe hold off on completing them until after raid. That way, if you do get the legendary item, you have some digs available to give you a head start, because the only other way to get these fleeting glow spores is looting them from treasure chests, and the drop rate is pretty low. As for the other items on the list, you can buy most of them from the auction house, or if you have materials, some of them can be crafted, and that will save you some gold. Now, in terms of cost, the blacksmithing piece, the reclaimed gauntlet chassis, costs the most and takes the longest to farm. The 240 temporal vestigial makes up over half of what is required for all 3 pieces, and the other farmed item, the Ancient Elementium fragments, can be annoying if you've already completed raid for the week. On top of that, the Shadowed Alloy cost about 60k on its own, so all up I spent 95,500 gold on materials for this item. I killed 7 heroic raid bosses, and I spent a few hours farming at Pyrrhic Assault. The engineered item, the Inspired Auto Recalibrator, can be the easiest or the hardest depending on your situation. The Fleeting Glow Spores can take a while to grind out from treasure chests if you've already done your digs for the week, but the 12 souls are the most annoying thing to farm. These items are soulbound, they can't be bought, but if you are lucky enough, and you can probably pay for them, the engineer crafting the item for you can use their souls if they have any on hand. I only found this out after I started farming them, but I only got about a quarter of the way through farming before my engineer suggested we try submitting the order without the souls since he had them, and it did go through. Now, if you are going to farm the souls yourself, the annoying part is that the soul inhaler that you use to capture the soul has a 5-minute cooldown after use, even if you don't capture a soul. And you need 3 types of each soul: fire, frost, air, and earth. So at the very least, this is going to take you about an hour. So once you've got your souls, 80 temporal vestigial, and 50 fleeting glow spores, all you need are 50 arc-light capacitors, which cost me 18,800 gold. If you farm the souls yourself, you'll need to buy the Zap Throttle Soul Inhaler and 12 empty soul cages from the auction house, which on my server are about 4,000 gold, bringing the total to 22,800 gold for the engineered item. Now, I crafted the Immaculate Coalescing Dracathist first because the materials were the easiest to farm. You will need a Jewelcrafter, 80 temporal vestigial, and 30 everburning shadow flame, and you can farm both of those from Pyrrhic Assault. The rest of the items I bought at the auction house, the Dracathists of course being the biggest cost here. A guildie friend kindly donated 5 and I had to buy the other 15, which cost about 73k, and the other items were 11,500 gold, bringing the total to 84,500 gold. So all up, I spent roughly 202,500 gold on materials, and I spent roughly 6 hours farming the materials that I couldn't buy. Once you have all 3 pieces crafted, speak to Nasz'uro, who will teleport you to the final quest, and then it's all yours. Congratulations. So there's no right or wrong order to do this in. It's very much going to depend on the digs and raid bosses you have available, and it will also depend on whether you have someone kind enough to farm with you to give you the buff and then commit to being in a group with you while you farm for temporal vestigial so you don't lose that buff. My tip here would be to start on the temporal vestigial right away, but also remember that it will drop from the raid bosses when you go to farm the ancient elementium fragments, so don't feel like you need to grind it all out at the assault. If you don't want to farm for the souls, which I don't blame you, I suggest finding an engineer that already has them, or finding out which ones they have and which ones you need to farm, because they are very time consuming to grind due to the cooldown on the inhaler.